When my own children took me to the movies that October afternoon, I never imagined I'd leave in handcuffs, thrown into a kidnapper's car that they themselves had hired. The text message I got during the movie wasn't from a stranger. It was from someone who wanted to save my life from my own kids. Before we continue, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories. Hit the notification bell because we have new stories every day. Leave a like, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. My name is Robert Miller. I'm 64 years old, and for decades, I believed I had built a solid family based on authentic values and unconditional love. I was an entrepreneur in the textile industry in Chicago. I built a fortune of almost $2 million, working 18-hour days for 30 years. And I thought my sacrifices had been worth it to leave a prosperous and secure future for Daniel and Sarah, my two only children. My wife Linda had passed away from breast cancer 4 years ago, leaving me a widower at 60. Since then, I had poured all my paternal affection into my adult children, helping them financially whenever they needed it, lending them money without interest, even considering bringing them in as full partners in my family business. I sincerely believed we were a united family that supported each other through difficult times. That afternoon, October 15th, 2024, my kids suggested we go to the movies, completely unexpectedly. "Dad, it's been a while since we spent time together as a family," Sarah said with that charming smile that always melted my heart and reminded me so much of her deceased mother. Daniel nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, let's go see that action movie you like so much. It'll be like old times." The invitation seemed strange because they had barely reached out to me in months, always busy with their own complicated lives, their demanding jobs, and their constant financial problems, which I tried to help them solve discreetly without making them feel humiliated or dependent. We went to the big AMC downtown, one of the largest movie complexes in Chicago. I remember perfectly. They bought tickets for the 7:30 p.m. show, an American action movie that had just been released. They chose seats in the back row of the theater, which was completely unusual because I always preferred to sit in the central rows to see the screen better and hear the dialogue correctly. "We'll be more comfortable here, Dad," Daniel insisted when I mentioned my usual preference. "Besides, if you need to go to the bathroom during the movie, you won't disturb other viewers." His explanation sounded logical, but something in his tone felt forced and rehearsed. During the first 30 minutes of the movie, I noticed they were both visibly nervous and anxious, constantly checking their cell phones with tense expressions. Daniel was even sweating slightly, even though the theater's air conditioning was working perfectly. Sarah was bouncing her leg nervously, a gesture she'd had since she was a child when she was worried about something important or when she had done something mischievous. Then, the moment came that changed my life forever. At 8:15 p.m., exactly during a car chase scene, my cell phone vibrated discreetly. A text message from a completely unknown number. It said, "Mr. Miller, leave the theater discreetly. Immediately. Do not say anything to your children. Your life is in imminent danger. Wait for me at the entrance to the underground parking garage of the mall. I am a private investigator hired by your sister Carol to protect you." My sister Carol had died of a heart attack 3 years ago. The reference confused me completely. My heart began to race uncontrollably. What exactly did this alarming message mean? Who could be sending me such a warning? Why did it specifically mention my children as a potential threat? I discreetly glanced at Daniel and Sarah out of the corner of my eye, trying to detect anything suspicious in their behavior. Daniel's face was tense and focused on his phone, typing something quickly. Sarah continued to bounce her leg nervously, but now she was also biting her nails, another of her characteristic gestures when she was lying or hiding something important since she was little. "I have to go to the bathroom," I whispered as naturally as possible. Daniel looked at me quickly with an expression I couldn't fully interpret. "Do you want me to go with you, Dad? This theater is huge and it's easy to get lost." His offer struck me as strangely suspicious, because he had never shown such concern for my sense of direction before. "No, don't worry, I'll be right back," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "It will only be a few minutes." I left the movie theater with my legs trembling uncontrollably, faking complete calm, but feeling that every step might be observed and analyzed by my own children. The theater hallway seemed endless, and every person who passed by could be part of some conspiracy that my mind still refused to fully comprehend. In the underground garage, a man of about 50 was waiting for me, dark-haired, with a neat beard and a serious expression. He was wearing a dark suit and carrying a folder under his arm. "Mr. Miller, I'm Isaac Cole, licensed private investigator." We have very little time to explain the situation. His next words froze my blood and forever destroyed the image I had of my family. "Your children have hired 2 known criminals to kidnap you when you leave the theater tonight. The elaborate plan is to take you to an abandoned warehouse out in Joliet and force you to transfer $300,000 from your personal bank accounts before physically eliminating you." "That's completely impossible," I stammered as my world fell to pieces. "They're my children. I raised them myself. I've given them everything they have." Isaac immediately showed me a series of photographs on his cell phone that documented a terrifying reality. Daniel entering a secret loan shark's office in the South Side, dated September 25th. Sarah secretly meeting 2 dangerous-looking men with criminal records in a shady bar on the West Side. A photograph dated October 2nd. The images were perfectly documented, with digital timestamps that left no room for doubt about their authenticity. "How exactly did you get this compromising evidence?" I asked with a broken voice, feeling each revelation was like a direct punch to the gut. "Your sister-in-law, Paula, hired me professionally 3 weeks before she passed away from her terminal illness," Isaac explained, meticulously organizing more documents from his folder. "She specifically asked me to discreetly watch your nephews Daniel and Sarah, because she had well-founded suspicions that both had extremely serious financial problems and could pose a real threat to your personal safety and assets. Paula, my late wife Linda's younger sister, had always been an extraordinarily perceptive and intuitive woman. I vividly remembered our last weekly phone conversations before her death from pancreatic cancer last month. Robert, be very, very careful with Daniel and Sarah," she had warned me repeatedly during her last weeks of life. "They are gradually changing. They've become strangely cold and indifferent towards you. There's something in their eyes that deeply frightens me." At the time, I naively thought it was the paranoid imagination of a seriously ill woman terrified by the proximity of her own death. How completely wrong I was. "The hired criminals are identified as Matt Stone and David Rose," Isaac continued, showing me detailed police files. "Both have extensive criminal records for armed robbery, aggravated extortion, and criminal association. Your children have promised them exactly $5,000 each for successfully completing the job. The remaining money from the extortion is intended to pay off Daniel's urgent debts with illegal lenders and finance the economic bailout of Sarah's bankrupt law firm." He showed me additional, even more devastating photographs. My own children personally handing over cash to these professional criminals in the Northgate Mall parking lot. Daniel was smiling broadly as he cordially shook Matt's hand, as if it were a completely normal business deal. Sarah was hugging David familiarly as if he were an old trusted friend, not a criminal hired to murder her father. The images literally burned my eyes and my soul. The betrayal was so deep and calculated that my mind resisted processing it completely. "But there's something considerably worse, Mr. Miller," Isaac added with a grim expression. "I've managed to record phone conversations where both siblings explicitly discuss the need to physically eliminate you after getting the extorted money. They can't afford to leave living witnesses who could eventually incriminate them to the judicial authorities." He handed me wireless earbuds and played audio files that completely shattered any residual hope of misunderstanding or misinterpretation. Daniel's unmistakable voice, clearly telling Matt, during a conversation on October 8th, "My father is an old man, weak and trusting. After we successfully get the $300,000 we need, do exactly what you consider most convenient for your safety. We'll be quietly at home with perfect and irrefutable alibis." Sarah's cold, calculating voice adding immediately, "Make it look like a common street robbery. The police will never remotely suspect us as direct family members. We are model children who love our father deeply." My legs gave out completely, and I had to lean against a parking garage column to keep from collapsing. Isaac gripped my arm firmly with a sympathetic but professional expression. "Breathe deeply and stay calm, Mr. Miller. We still have enough time to completely reverse this situation and protect your life. How exactly do they plan to execute this elaborate crime? Where specifically do they intend to take me?" "They've rented an abandoned industrial warehouse under false identities on a secondary road in Joliet, mile marker 23 exactly. Your children have meticulously provided them with the access keys to all your online bank accounts, your personal passwords, and even your additional security codes. The planned procedure is apparently simple. When you leave the theater after the movie, Matt and David will approach, professionally pretending to be common street muggers. Your children will act convincingly as scared and innocent victims, but the criminals will only take you. The reality hit me brutally like an industrial hammer. Absolutely everything had been a meticulously planned theatrical performance. The spontaneous invitation to the movies, the strategic selection of the back seats, their palpable nervousness. They had been patiently waiting for the precise moment to execute their murderous plan. How long exactly have they been planning this parricidal conspiracy? According to my exhaustive investigations and the documentation gathered since the beginning of September, approximately, Daniel lost enormous amounts of money gambling compulsively in illegal online casinos. Professional loan sharks began to physically threaten him, to seriously harm his entire family if he didn't immediately settle his accumulated debts. Sarah simultaneously lost the millionaire Mendoza construction court case that would have provided her exactly $200,000 in professional fees. Both desperately needed a quick, radical, and definitive economic solution. My tortured mind retrospectively recalled the month of September with painful and revealing clarity. Daniel had been inexplicably affectionate and attentive, visiting me more frequently than usual, subtly asking about my bank passwords, supposedly for family security reasons. Sarah had repeatedly insisted on meticulously reviewing my updated will and all my current life insurance policies. The obvious signs had been there all along, but I had completely misinterpreted them as genuine and natural filial concern. As Isaac patiently waited for my answer on how to proceed, my mind embarked on a devastating journey into recent episodes, meticulously reconstructing the last few months with a painful clarity that was absolutely unbearable. All the scattered pieces of the puzzle began to fit together sinisterly, forming a terrifying mosaic of manipulation and family betrayal. I vividly remembered September 8th when Daniel showed up unexpectedly at my house with apparently genuine tears streaming down his cheeks. "Dad, I'm going through a very difficult and desperate financial time. Could you urgently lend me $15,000? His performance had been so convincing, with that broken voice and those trembling hands, that I gave him the money immediately without asking any uncomfortable questions, as I had always done throughout his adult life. I now understood bitterly that this substantial amount had not been nearly enough to settle his accumulated debts with the criminal lenders, and that it had probably been used as a down payment to hire his future murderers. On September 18th, Sarah arrived at my family home with a bottle of expensive red wine and suggested we have an intimate dinner together, something we hadn't done in months. During that apparently affectionate meal, she subtly questioned me about my bank savings, my diversified investments, my real estate properties, and even about the numerical access code to my home safe, where I kept important documents and some emergency cash. "Dad, at your age you should have absolutely everything perfectly organized and documented in case something unexpected happens to you," she had said with a radiant smile that I now recognized as completely calculating and manipulative. It's the responsibility of children to help their elderly parents with such delicate matters. The first week of October, both siblings began to systematically coordinate their family visits. They always arrived together with apparently logical excuses. They always had private conversations in low voices while I was making coffee in the kitchen. They always seemed to be discussing something urgent and important that they would abruptly stop when I returned to the living room. One afternoon on October 5th, I heard them specifically mention the Joliet warehouse during one of these secret conversations, and I naively thought they were planning some joint business project or perhaps considering renting a space to start a family business. How incredibly naive and blind I had been not to perceive the obvious signs of danger. On October 4th, Daniel fervently insisted on accompanying me personally to the main Chase Bank branch to professionally help me with complicated administrative procedures. He watched every movement of my fingers on the digital keypad intently as I routinely accessed my online banking, obviously memorizing every password, every security code, every verification procedure. He even diplomatically suggested I change some old passwords for modern cybersecurity reasons, maliciously ensuring they were simple and predictable enough for him to remember perfectly. Sarah, for her part, had begun to ask me apparently casual questions about my specific daily routine. "What time exactly do you usually leave the house on weekends, Dad? Do you have any fixed social plans for the next few days? Do you usually tell anyone about your scheduled activities?" Her questions seemed like normal family conversation, but I now terrifyingly understood that they were meticulously studying my daily habits to identify the perfect and safest time to execute the kidnapping without witnesses or interruptions. On October 10th, during a supposedly routine visit, I caught them exchanging knowing and significant glances when they thought I wasn't watching them directly. Daniel discreetly showed Sarah something on his cell phone screen, probably messages or photographs related to the conspiracy, and she nodded gravely with an expression of cold determination that was completely unknown to me on my own daughter's face. After that unsettling visit, my son began to call me on the phone every day, without exception, something absolutely unusual for him, considering we normally went weeks without communicating. During these apparently affectionate calls, he would specifically ask me what I was doing at every moment, where I was exactly, who I had spoken to during the day, what plans I had for the following days. On the afternoon of October 13th, exactly 2 days before the fateful invitation to the movies, Sarah came to the house alone with a visibly anxious and restless expression. She seemed to be struggling internally with disturbing thoughts. She insistently asked me to show her again, step by step, how to correctly access all my online bank accounts, professionally claiming that she wanted to help me modernize and optimize my personal finances for greater security. For over an F-hour, we meticulously practiced electronic transactions, transfer processes, additional verification codes, and she took extraordinarily detailed notes in her professional lawyer's notebook. She even made me repeat several procedures to ensure she had perfectly memorized every step of the process. "It's important that you know how to do this quickly and without errors, Dad," she had said with a smile that I now recognized as sinister. "In emergency situations, speed and precision are fundamental." Now, standing in that cold, poorly lit underground garage, all those seemingly innocent memories brutally transformed into overwhelming and irrefutable evidence. My own children had not only planned to systematically rob me, they had studied every psychological and logistical detail to ensure the absolute success of my premeditated murder. "You've observed them behaving notably strange during the last few weeks," Isaac continued perceptively, as if he were reading my tortured thoughts. "People who plan such serious crimes always show involuntary signs of extreme psychological stress and uncontrollable anxiety." He was completely right in his professional analysis. Daniel had visibly lost weight during the last month. His dark circles had become dramatically pronounced, and his hands trembled perceptibly when he lit cigarettes, a destructive habit he had resumed after years of total abstinence. Sarah, normally impeccable in her professional appearance, had gone consecutive days without fixing her hair properly, and had developed a compulsive nervous tic of biting her nails until they bled. "But the most psychologically revealing thing," Isaac added gravely, consulting his investigative notes, "is that for the past 2 weeks, they have been secretly visiting a private forensic psychologist specialized in criminal behavior. They wanted to scientifically ensure that their emotional behavior after your death would appear genuinely grieving and convincing to the authorities." That information completely shattered me inside. They had not only meticulously planned to murder me for money, they had professionally rehearsed how to cry convincingly at my funeral. "Mr. Miller, I need you to make a crucial decision immediately," Isaac urged me, consulting his watch with a tense expression. "Your children are going to start getting seriously worried if you don't return to the movie theater soon. Any prolonged delay could arouse suspicion and fatally compromise the entire operation." I took a deep breath, trying to process the devastating magnitude of the family betrayal, and stared blankly at the cracked ceiling of the underground garage. For 64 years I had maintained an unshakable faith in the fundamental goodness of people, especially my closest family. In that terrible and definitive moment, that naive trust died forever, replaced by an iron determination I didn't know I possessed. "Let's set the most perfect trap possible," I declared with a glacial coldness that completely surprised me. "I want them to pay for every second of planning, for every elaborate lie, for every false kiss they gave me while conspiring to kill me." Isaac immediately took out his professional cell phone and dialed a number that he evidently had memorized for emergencies. "Detective Johnson, this is Cole, speaking from the field. We have definitive confirmation and absolute green light to execute Operation Parricide." The conversation was extraordinarily brief, but intensely coordinated, full of codes and references that demonstrated meticulous prior planning. When he finished the call, he quickly explained as we walked towards his official vehicle. The Central Precinct has had a specialized team completely ready for 3 days. Detective Johnson personally knows Matt Stone and David Rose very well. They have been actively pursuing them for other serious crimes for the last 8 months, and this operation will finally allow us to capture them in the act. He carefully handed me a tiny technological device the size of a coin. It's a latest generation wireless microphone with an integrated GPS locator. It adheres magnetically under the inner lapel of your jacket and will be completely invisible. It will automatically record everything that happens during the next few hours and will allow us to track your exact location in real time from the operations center. His expert hands worked quickly and with professional precision, placing the device completely invisibly and imperceptibly. He also provided me with basic technical instructions on its operation and duration. "How exactly does the operational plan you've designed work?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure as my family world disintegrated completely. "You will return to the theater immediately and act completely naturally, as if this conversation never happened. When the movie ends according to the planned schedule, you will leave normally with your children, just as they originally planned. Matt Stone and David Rose will inevitably approach you in the outdoor parking lot, exactly as their family conspiracy has established. You must not resist physically at all. You must allow them to take you to the Joliet warehouse without creating complications." The prospect terrified me deeply, but I understood the strategic logic of the plan perfectly. And the police intervention? 3 elite patrol cars will follow them, maintaining a safe and professional distance to avoid detection. 2 other specialized teams are already strategically positioned in the vicinity of the industrial warehouse since this morning. We have experienced snipers located in surrounding buildings and a specialized kidnapping rescue unit with military equipment. The optimal moment for the decisive intervention will be precisely when your children physically appear at the warehouse to personally witness the extortion and give the final order for elimination. Isaac spread a detailed topographical map of the Joliet industrial area on the hood of his car, marked with strategic annotations and escape routes. The warehouse was located in a semi-abandoned area surrounded by extensive open fields and secondary roads that would greatly facilitate the police operation without risk of civilian casualties. Your children have rented this specific place using completely falsified documentation, but we have detailed bank records of all the financial transactions that connect them directly and irrefutably to the conspiracy. We have also legally wiretapped their cell phones with judicial authorization for a week. He showed me printed transcripts of intercepted messages that turned my stomach. Daniel writing to Matt on October 12th. "Dad will leave the theater around 10:30 p.m. Remember perfectly. Absolutely no physical violence until you are completely at the warehouse. We can't risk street witnesses." Sarah sending the exact GPS location of the movie theater parking lot and meticulously describing my physical appearance. Navy blue jacket, white shirt, gray tie. Walks slowly because he gets tired easily. Always carries a cane in his left hand. The clinical coldness of their descriptions turned my stomach violently. They had systematically catalogued me as easy, vulnerable, predictable, and completely defenseless prey. "There's something else you should know before proceeding," Isaac continued with a particularly grave expression. "We intercepted a phone conversation between Sarah and David early this morning. She explicitly told him that if you were too resistant or problematic during the extortion process, they could significantly accelerate the final timeline." I understood the sinister euphemism perfectly. If I flatly refused to transfer the money or caused any kind of unexpected complications, they would execute me immediately without further delay. "How much time do you approximately need to successfully complete the entire rescue operation?" "Once they arrive at the industrial warehouse, we estimate between 30 and 40 minutes until your children physically appear. They want to witness personally, with their own eyes, that you effectively transfer the complete amount before authorizing the final elimination order. It's their moment of absolute triumph, their demonstration of total power, and precisely that excessive arrogance will be their definitive downfall." Isaac also provided me with an additional panic device the size of a button. "If you feel your life is in immediate and imminent danger, press this mechanism firmly for 3 seconds. The police intervention will be absolutely instantaneous, although that could partially compromise the legal evidence against your children." We walked back towards the movie theater complex. In the elevator, we meticulously reviewed the last crucial details of the plan. Remember perfectly, Mr. Miller. You must act genuinely surprised when the kidnappers appear, but without theatrically exaggerating the reaction. Daniel and Sarah will be minutely observing your every gesture to ensure you suspect nothing of the conspiracy. And what if I involuntarily recognize something in their behavior that reveals they knew exactly what was going to happen? Maintain absolute calm and control your facial expressions. Your children have exhaustively rehearsed this moment for weeks, but you have the decisive psychological advantage of knowing the complete truth. Discreetly observe their micro-expressions. If they involuntarily smile or seem too calm during the supposed violent robbery, that will irrefutably confirm their guilt to our hidden cameras. Before we parted ways for good, he offered me one last piece of professional advice that marked me deeply. Your children have betrayed you in the most brutal and ruthless way possible, but tonight, justice will finally reach those who deserve it. Maintain your personal dignity, Mr. Miller. Very soon, they will be exactly where they deserve to be. I re-entered the movie theater, my heart pounding violently against my ribs. Daniel and Sarah received me with worried expressions, which I now recognized as completely faked and rehearsed. "Are you okay, Dad?" Sarah whispered with false tenderness. "You took a very long time. We were starting to get seriously worried. Just routine prostate problems," I lied with surprising naturalness. "You know how it is at my age. Everything completely normal. But nothing in my life would ever be normal again." The last 40 minutes of the movie passed like a suffocating eternity. Each cinematic explosion resonated painfully in my tight chest. Each dramatic dialogue was completely lost in the deafening roar of my blood circulating rapidly through my veins. My consciousness was schizophrenically divided between the giant screen where a car chase was unfolding and the terrifying reality of sitting next to two people who had meticulously planned my murder. Daniel obsessively checked his digital watch every few minutes, his eyes shining with an anxiety I now understood perfectly. It wasn't nervousness about the action movie. It was homicidal anticipation for the crime that was about to be executed. His fingers drummed rhythmically on the armrest of the seat, marking a macabre beat that matched the accelerated palpitations of my heart. Sarah compulsively moved her right foot in erratic, uncontrolled movements, a gesture I recognized as her physical manifestation of extreme stress since childhood. But this time, it wasn't about a difficult school exam or a childish lie. It was the pre-criminal anxiety of someone about to witness the murder of their own father. When the end credits finally appeared on the screen, Sarah stood up immediately with an artificial and forced energy. "Well, Dad, that was a really great and exciting movie. Shall we go home now?" Her smile was too bright, too wide, too theatrical. Her facial muscles twitched involuntarily, creating micro-expressions that betrayed her elaborate performance. Daniel got up with a haste completely unusual for him, as he traditionally used to stay and watch every last credit of any movie. "Yeah, let's go quickly. It's getting late and I have important meetings very early tomorrow." He lied shamelessly, because it was Saturday, and he had no work obligations the following Sunday. We left the theater, strategically blending in with the crowd of spectators simultaneously leaving other screenings. In the main lobby, Daniel suggested, apparently casually, taking the elevator down to the underground garage. "The car is on level -2, he declared with false confidence, even though I vividly remembered that we had specifically parked on level -1 during our arrival. Small logistical details that I would have completely overlooked before, but that now took on a sinister and incriminating meaning. Every minor lie was part of a larger criminal choreography. During the claustrophobic descent in the metal elevator, both siblings remained strangely silent and motionless. Sarah was breathing shallowly and raggedly, as if she were holding back intense emotions that threatened to explode. Daniel constantly patted his jacket pockets, checking for something specific he was carrying, probably the cell phone to communicate with the hired killers. The elevator doors opened with an ominous metallic sound on level -2. The underground garage was unsettlingly poorly lit, with barely a dozen vehicles scattered irregularly among the massive reinforced concrete columns. The fluorescent lighting flickered intermittently, creating dancing shadows that transformed the space into a perfect setting for a violent crime. Our footsteps echoed ominously against the concrete walls, amplified by the peculiar acoustics of the enclosed space. Each echo sounded like a countdown to my scheduled execution. "This way, Dad," Daniel indicated with false naturalness, deliberately directing me towards a particularly dark and isolated area of the garage. It was an obvious and blatant lie. His silver Toyota Corolla was parked in the completely opposite direction, under one of the few lights that worked correctly. When we had walked approximately 50 meters from the elevator, entering the darkest area, furthest from any potential witnesses, I clearly heard accelerated and determined footsteps approaching from behind us. My survival instinct activated instantly, but I remembered Isaac's specific instructions to maintain absolute calm. I turned slowly and saw two burly, threatening men approaching quickly with coordinated professional movements. One was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt that partially concealed his face. The other wore a worn brown leather jacket and dark jeans. "Stop right there!" The one in the black sweatshirt shouted aggressively. "This is an armed robbery. Don't move or make a sound." My children's performance was absolutely masterful and convincing. Daniel immediately stepped back with apparently natural movements, raising his hands tremblingly with an expression of terror that seemed completely genuine. "Please, gentlemen, don't hurt us. We're a quiet, hard-working family. You can take whatever you want." Sarah began to sob dramatically and convincingly, clinging desperately to her brother, as if seeking fraternal protection. Her tears seemed completely real, likely the product of the psychological training they had received from the forensic specialist. The man in the leather jacket approached me directly, with determined, threatening steps. "You, old man, come here immediately. We only want you specifically." It was undoubtedly Matt Stone. I recognized his angular face perfectly from the photographs Isaac had shown me during our clandestine meeting. "No, please, we beg you," Sarah whimpered, with a dramatic performance worthy of an award. "He's our elderly father. He has serious heart problems. If anything happens to him, he'll die of fright." "Take us instead," Daniel intervened with false paternal heroism. "We're young and strong. We can work to pay you exactly what you want." David rose. The one in the black sweatshirt pushed them roughly against a concrete column. "Shut your mouths. We only need the old man for a specific job. You two stay exactly here and count to 1,000 slowly before calling the police. If you follow us, or do anything stupid, we'll kill him without hesitation." I meticulously observed my children's facial expressions during this explicit death threat. For an almost imperceptible fraction of a second, I saw something that completely chilled my blood. Daniel had to consciously suppress a smile of satisfaction. His facial muscles visibly tensed as he struggled to maintain the mask of filial terror. Sarah, for her part, blinked excessively for several seconds, something she always did since she was little when she was lying or hiding mischief. I also noticed that her hands weren't genuinely trembling as they should in a real terror situation. Matt grabbed my arm with unnecessary and clearly exaggerated force. "Come on, cooperative grandpa. If you cooperate quietly and don't cause problems, we won't do you any physical harm." He led me firmly towards a white van that was strategically parked near the main exit of the garage. As they inexorably pulled me away from them, I deliberately turned my head to look at my children one last time before the final outcome of this family tragedy. What I saw definitively confirmed all my most terrible suspicions. Daniel had his cell phone in his right hand, but he clearly wasn't dialing 911. Instead, he was composing a text message, probably informing the kidnappers that the first phase of the plan had been successfully executed. Sarah was no longer crying desperately as she had seconds before. She was staring fixedly in our direction with a cold, calculating expression that was completely different from the maternal pain any genuine daughter should be experiencing, watching her father being violently kidnapped. David violently opened the back doors of the white van with rough, professional movements. "Get in quickly, old man, and don't make any unnecessary noise." The interior was obviously conditioned specifically for kidnappings. Seats without seat belts, completely tinted windows that prevented seeing outside, and even a thick folded blanket that was probably intended to cover me during transport to prevent me from memorizing the route. Before obediently getting in, I pretended to accidentally trip and fall dramatically onto the garage floor. From that strategic position, I could clearly observe my children in the distance without arousing suspicion. What I witnessed definitively confirmed my worst fears about their direct involvement in the criminal conspiracy. Daniel was calmly putting his cell phone away in the inside pocket of his jacket, with relaxed movements that contrasted dramatically with the hysteria any son whose father had just been violently kidnapped should be feeling. His shoulders had visibly relaxed, as if he had successfully completed a stressful task. Sarah was discreetly touching up her makeup with a pocket mirror, checking that her appearance was presentable for what was clearly coming next. Neither of them showed the desperation, panic, or hysteria that any genuine family would experience in such a traumatic situation. "Get the hell up!" Matt growled threateningly, pulling me roughly by the arm until I was on my feet. "We don't have all damn night for childish games." I cooperatively got into the van, knowing that every second of this criminal performance was being meticulously recorded by the hidden microphone attached under my lapel. The kidnappers slammed the metal doors with a definitive sound, and the vehicle immediately started, leaving the underground garage for the nocturnal streets of Chicago. The journey to Joliet lasted exactly 29 minutes according to my wristwatch. David drove, strictly adhering to the speed limits to avoid attracting police attention, while Matt sat threateningly beside me in the back, casually resting a semi-automatic pistol on his right thigh, as a constant reminder of my vulnerability. During the first few miles, I deliberately tried to strike up a conversation to obtain additional information that might be useful for the subsequent police investigation. "Please, gentlemen, I have young grandchildren waiting for me at home," I lied convincingly, perfectly playing the role of a desperate victim. "I just want to return home safe and sound to my family." Matt let out a harsh, contemptuous laugh that echoed sinisterly in the van's metal interior. "Your family is perfectly fine, naive old man. In fact, they're considerably better off than you could possibly imagine." His words unequivocally confirmed my most terrible suspicions, but I carefully maintained my expression of feigned confusion. "I don't understand exactly what that means," I replied, feigning total perplexity. "It means your dear little children have provided us with very detailed and valuable information about you," David explained from the driver's seat, without taking his eyes off the road. "Like how you have over $1,200,000 strategically distributed in 3 different banks. Like how you live completely alone in that huge house on the north side and that practically no one would visit you if you disappeared for several days." The betrayal was even more systematic and profound than I had initially imagined. My children had not only provided basic logistical information to facilitate the kidnapping, they had performed a complete psychological analysis of my personality and a detailed study of my vulnerabilities to maximize the chances of the extortion's success. Daniel specifically explained to us that you have bank access codes handwritten in a leather notebook that you religiously keep in the center drawer of your personal desk, Matt continued with evident satisfaction. "But since we're considerate and professional guys, we're going to grant you the opportunity to make the transfers yourself directly. It will be cleaner and more efficient for everyone involved." We finally arrived at a completely desolate industrial area, full of abandoned warehouses, empty lots covered in weeds, and cracked secondary roads that hadn't been maintained in years. The van turned down a bumpy dirt road until it stopped in front of a rusty metal warehouse of about 5,000 square feet, surrounded by wasteland that stretched to the horizon. David turned off the engine and immediately got out to manually open a heavy sliding door that screeched ominously on deteriorated rails. The metallic sound reverberated in the silent night, like the groan of a prehistoric creature. The interior of the industrial warehouse was exactly as Isaac had described it to me in detail during our clandestine meeting. Completely empty except for a plastic folding table, 2 cheap garden chairs, and a laptop computer already on, its bluish screen providing the only illumination in the cavernous space. A naked incandescent bulb hung from the vaulted ceiling, creating a circle of yellowish, sinister light in the exact center of the space. "Sit comfortably in that chair," Matt ordered me dryly, pointing towards the seat in front of the computer. "We're going to resolve this quickly and without unnecessary complications for anyone." David ceremoniously closed the main warehouse door and activated several metal bolts from the inside with efficient, practiced movements. The sound of each latch engaging echoed ominously in the empty space, dramatically underlining my total isolation from the outside world. Then he approached professionally and placed the laptop screen directly in front of me, with the precision of someone who had performed this procedure multiple times before. "Your cooperative son provided us with the specific web addresses of your 3 main banks," he explained meticulously as he opened several tabs in the internet browser. "Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, respectively. We need you to transfer exactly $100,000 from each account to this bank account number. He showed me a crumpled piece of paper with handwritten numbers in blue ink. I don't have that much liquid money available immediately. I lied deliberately to buy time. Most of my savings are tied up in fixed-term deposits with penalties for early withdrawal. Don't take us for complete idiots, you lying old man, David growled threateningly, bringing his face close to mine until I could smell his breath of tobacco and alcohol. Sarah showed us updated screenshots of all your bank accounts. We know exactly how much money you have available in each one, down to the last cent. The evidence of my children's direct complicity piled up inexorably with each revelation. They had provided not only general financial information, but specific, updated, and extraordinarily detailed banking data that they could only have obtained through direct access to my personal accounts. I slowly began to enter the Chase Access credentials, feigning extreme nervousness as my fingers trembled theatrically on the keyboard. In reality, I was strategically buying time, trusting fully that the specialized police were tactically positioning themselves around the warehouse perimeter according to the established operational plan. Hurry up considerably, Matt urged me impatiently, pressing the cold barrel of his pistol to my right temple. The sooner we finish this business, the sooner you can go back quietly to your beloved family. I finally accessed my main Chase checking account. The screen showed an available balance of exactly $122,800. David whistled admiringly when he saw the figure. Damn, the old man really does have some serious cash saved up. At that critical moment, we clearly heard the unmistakable sound of several powerful engines approaching the warehouse simultaneously from different directions. David tensed immediately like a compressed spring. What the hell is that? It's probably just Daniel and Sarah arriving as scheduled, Matt replied, trying to reassure himself. They specifically said they would come personally to make sure everything went perfectly. David cautiously approached a dirty, cracked window, slightly moved aside a makeshift curtain, and peered out into the night. Yeah, it's definitely Daniel's silver Toyota. They're here exactly as they promised. Moments later, we heard rhythmic knocking on the exterior metal door, clearly a pre-established signal. David meticulously opened the multiple locks, and Daniel appeared in the doorway, immediately followed by Sarah. Both feigned expressions of concern and anxiety that were completely exaggerated. "How's Dad?" Sarah asked with an extraordinarily convincing dramatic performance. "Please, tell us you haven't hurt him physically." Her eyes filled with apparently genuine tears as she approached me with hesitant, fearful movements. "He's perfectly healthy and cooperative," Matt replied professionally. "We were just starting the bank transfer process when you arrived." Daniel approached me directly and placed a hand on my shoulder in an apparently comforting and paternal gesture. His touch repulsed me, knowing that those same hands had delivered money to hire my future murderers. "It's okay, Dad. Stay calm and do exactly what these gentlemen ask. You'll be back home soon, safe and sound." His words sounded so artificial and rehearsed that I felt physically nauseous. Every syllable was an elaborate lie. Every gesture of concern was pure theater intended to deceive not only the kidnappers but probably also future police investigations. Sarah strategically positioned herself behind my chair, supposedly to offer emotional support, but I immediately noticed she was personally verifying that I entered the bank codes correctly on the computer. Her eyes constantly darted between the screen and my fingers, memorizing every move to ensure I didn't make deliberate errors. "Come on, Dad," she murmured softly in my ear with an apparently affectionate voice. "They're just numbers on a digital screen. Your life and your health are worth infinitely more than any amount of money." The suffocating irony of her words was that, for her and her brother, my life was worth considerably less than the money. I meticulously completed the first bank transfer. $100,000 instantly disappeared from my Chase account, transferred to an anonymous account that would probably be emptied and closed before dawn. "Perfect and efficient," David celebrated, rubbing his hands with evident satisfaction. "Now do the exact same with Bank of America." My children watched every move with a feverish attention that they tried to disguise under masks of family concern. Daniel was compulsively biting his lower lip, not out of genuine anxiety, but out of contained excitement at seeing his plan executed perfectly. Sarah was breathing raggedly, but not from terror. It was the accelerated breathing of someone about to achieve a long-awaited victory. I accessed my Bank of America account and began the transfer process. At that precise moment, We heard the unmistakable and terrifying roar of multiple heavy vehicles surrounding the warehouse at high speed. The sound of tires screeching against the asphalt and powerful engines accelerating created a cacophony that vibrated the metal walls of the building. David ran desperately to the window and instantly turned pale as he surveyed the scene outside. Damn it, damn it, damn it. It's the Chicago PD. There are patrol cars everywhere. We're completely surrounded. A police megaphone blared from outside with an authoritative, amplified voice. Chicago Police! You have the building completely surrounded. Come out immediately with your hands visible in the air. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender peacefully. Panic instantly erupted inside the warehouse like an explosion of collective hysteria. Matt immediately grabbed his gun, pointing it directly at my head with erratic, desperate movements. This is an elaborate trap. The old bastard deliberately sold us out. David started running in circles like a caged animal, frantically looking for some alternative exit that obviously didn't exist. But the most psychologically revealing and devastating thing was the immediate reaction of my own children. Daniel showed no genuine surprise or concern for my safety. His first facial expression was pure rage and homicidal fury directed specifically at me. "What did you do, Dad?" he screamed at me with a rage that definitively confirmed his conscious guilt. "How the hell could you betray us like this?" His words were a complete confession. An innocent son would have asked how I had managed to alert the police. He wouldn't have accused me of betraying them. Sarah, for her part, immediately pulled out her professional cell phone and began frantically deleting messages with rapid, desperate movements. A genuinely innocent lawyer would have been concerned exclusively for my physical safety. A criminal accomplice destroyed incriminating evidence connecting her directly to the conspiracy. "Shut up immediately," Matt yelled hysterically at Daniel. "Your father couldn't have warned anyone. We've been watching him constantly the entire time." "Then how the hell did they know exactly where to find us?" David retorted in a high-pitched, uncontrolled voice, gesturing wildly with his arms. The voice from the police megaphone intensified dramatically. "You have exactly 30 seconds left to come out peacefully. After that, we will proceed to enter by force. Release the hostage immediately." Sarah dangerously approached Matt with an expression I had never seen on my own daughter's face. Her eyes shone with a calculating coldness that was completely unknown and terrifying to me. "Listen to me very carefully, you idiot. If the police capture us all alive, my father will inevitably tell them that we specifically hired you for this. We will all go directly to prison for decades." Her mask of a concerned daughter had completely disappeared, revealing the cold, manipulative, and ruthless personality she had been hiding during months of criminal planning. "So, what do you suggest specifically?" Matt asked, sweating profusely as he kept the trembling gun against my temple. "Kill him right now." Immediately, Sarah replied without the slightest hesitation or remorse. "With no surviving witnesses, we are just innocent victims of a kidnapping that unfortunately went wrong." Daniel nodded vigorously, enthusiastically approving his sister's homicidal proposal. "She's completely right. A dead dad can't testify against us in any court. We'll tell the police we tried desperately to rescue him, and that we tragically arrived too late." The ruthless naturalness with which they discussed my immediate murder mentally paralyzed me. These creatures were not my children. They were psychopathic monsters disguised with familiar faces I had loved unconditionally for decades. Matt definitively raised his pistol to my head with obvious lethal intent. "You're completely right. It's better to end this quickly before the situation gets more complicated." At that exact and crucial moment, the warehouse's metal doors exploded simultaneously inward with devastating force. Dozens of officers from the Special Response Team stormed in coordinately through multiple entrances, shouting military commands and pointing automatic assault rifles. Everyone on the ground immediately. Hands visible. Do not move. Matt desperately tried to fire his weapon at me, but a strategically positioned sniper instantly took him down with a non-lethal precision shot to the right shoulder before he could pull the trigger. David launched himself suicidally towards a non-existent back door, but was brutally tackled by 3 specialized officers before he could move 2 meters. Daniel and Sarah automatically raised their hands, but their facial expressions showed desperate calculations instead of the relief genuine victims should feel. Their brains were working frantically, trying to devise convincing explanations for their presence in the warehouse and their participation in the events. Detective Johnson, a burly 50-year-old man with a gray mustache, approached me directly with a professional and concerned expression. "Are you physically all right, Mr. Miller? Do you need immediate medical attention?" "I'm perfectly fine, Detective," I replied with a surprisingly firm voice. "Everything has been meticulously recorded." I discreetly pointed to my lapel, where the hidden microphone had registered every incriminating word spoken during the last 2 crucial hours. My children's expressions simultaneously transformed into absolute horror as they realized they had been caught publicly confessing their parricidal conspiracy. "This is an elaborate and cruel trap," Daniel shouted desperately as officers handcuffed him. "My father set a treacherous ambush for us." "Exactly," I replied with a glacial coldness that surprised me. "Just like you set one for me." The days following the arrest were the most psychologically devastating of my existence. Not because of the media frenzy that immediately erupted, but because of the overwhelming mental process of retroactively reinterpreting 64 years of family memories that I now knew had been built on false foundations. Every seemingly sweet memory had transformed into a lie. Every birthday hug, every Christmas celebration, every "I love you" Dad uttered for decades was revealed as calculated manipulation by 2 psychopaths who had been studying me like predators study their prey. At the Central Precinct, I spent 3 hours giving my official statement to Detective Johnson. Every detail I remembered about my children's strange behavior became additional evidence against them. "Mr. Miller, I need you to understand the gravity of what they've done," the detective explained as we reviewed the transcripts. "This isn't just extortion. Your children deliberately planned your murder as an integral part of the crime." He showed me the intercepted conversations between Daniel and the kidnappers. In a recording from October 13th, my son said, "After you get the money, make sure he can't identify us. Do what's necessary." In another conversation, Sarah gave specific instructions. My father automatically memorizes faces. "You can't leave any loose ends." The implication was unequivocal. My death had been planned from the beginning. "How long have you been investigating them?" I asked. "Since September 28th. Your sister-in-law Paula came in personally 3 days before she died. She was very sick, but she insisted on reporting that her nephew and niece were planning something serious against you. Paula had been more perceptive than I imagined. Even in her last days, she had found the strength to protect me from my own children. She provided us with secret recordings," the detective continued. "Daniel had asked to borrow $5,000 from her, but when she refused, he told her, 'It doesn't matter. We'll soon have access to all of Dad's money, one way or another.'" The detective handed me a copy of Paula's will. In a specific clause, she bequeathed me all her evidence against Daniel and Sarah, along with money to hire investigators if necessary. That afternoon, I received a call from my lawyer, Frank. "Robert, I have news about your children's finances. Daniel owes $43,000 to illegal loan sharks, and Sarah has liens for $37,000. The figures explained their desperation, but they didn't justify the planned parricide. "There's something else," Frank continued. "I've reviewed the business accounts. Daniel has been diverting money for months. The irregularities total an additional $25,000. Every revelation was a punch. My son had not only planned to kill me, he had been stealing from me for months before deciding to eliminate me. On the third day, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I summoned Frank and dictated the instructions to modify my will. I want to totally disinherit Daniel and Sarah," I told him with a firm voice. "Not 1 cent should reach their hands, even if I die during the legal process." "Are you sure, Robert? It's an irreversible decision. I've never been more sure of anything." We drafted a new will, where my assets would be distributed among charities that help victims of family violence. The irony was deliberate. The money for which my children had tried to murder me would serve to help other families destroyed by betrayal. I also took steps to protect my company. Daniel was removed from all positions, while I hired external auditors to investigate his embezzlement. Frank informed me that both had tried to contact me from pretrial detention. "They've sent letters asking for forgiveness and begging you to drop the charges." "I don't want to read a single line of what they have to say," I replied categorically. "They've also contacted relatives, trying to get support to pressure you." That information hurt me. I knew some relatives might believe my children's manipulated versions, painting me as a vengeful father. "Frank, I want you to publish an official statement. Let the whole family know exactly what they did and why there will be no reconciliation." The statement appeared in the Chicago Tribune on Friday, October 22nd. Robert Miller confirms that his children, Daniel and Sarah, deliberately planned his murder to inherit his assets. The police evidence is irrefutable. There will be no forgiveness or inheritance for those who planned parricide for money. The next day, my phone rang off the hook. Family, friends, acquaintances, everyone wanted to know the details of the scandal that had shaken our community. But I had made a definitive decision. I would never again allow family betrayal to define me. It was time to start a completely new life, far from those who had proven that money was worth more than my life. Justice would run its course, but my personal healing had already begun. The trial began on the 14th of March 2025 at the Cook County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with journalists, family members, and onlookers drawn by a case that had shocked the entire state. The headlines for weeks had been relentless. The children who tried to murder their father for inheritance. I took the stand as the prosecution's main witness. Facing me, separated by barely 30 feet, were Daniel and Sarah, flanked by their defense attorneys. During the 5 months of pretrial detention, both had lost considerable weight and had deep, dark circles. The prosecutor, Ellen Vance, a 40-year-old woman with a reputation for being relentless in family violence cases, presented the evidence with surgical precision. The recordings where my children discussed my murder echoed throughout the courtroom, creating a deathly silence. As you can clearly hear, the prosecutor explained, replaying the warehouse conversation, the defendants not only actively participated in the kidnapping, but they explicitly ordered the physical elimination of their father when the situation became complicated. Daniel's defense attorney, Robert Sampson, tried to argue that his words were spoken under extreme duress. My client was terrified of the kidnappers and said irrational things to save his life. The prosecutor immediately shattered that defense. Then how do you explain that your client knew the kidnappers beforehand? How do you explain the documented payments of $10,000 to hire them? How do you explain that he provided detailed bank information about his father? During my testimony, which lasted 3 hours, I chronologically recounted all the events from the invitation to the movies to the arrest. I kept my voice firm, avoiding looking directly at my children. How did you feel when you discovered your children had planned your death? The prosecutor asked me. As if I had lived 64 years with 2 strangers, I replied. The people I thought I knew never really existed. When I finished my testimony, Daniel suddenly jumped up, shouting, "Dad, please! We were a family! You can't destroy everything over one mistake!" The judge ordered him to be restrained by security, but his outburst had been registered before the entire court. The most shocking moment came when the prosecutor presented the conversations between Sarah and her biological mother in Valencia. In a call from October 8th, Sarah had said, "Mom, soon you won't have to worry about money. Dad is going to have an accident, and Daniel and I will inherit everything." Her mother had replied, "Sarah, don't say such things even as a joke." "It's not a joke, Mom. It's all arranged." That conversation proved the plan had been shared with external family members, eliminating any plea of remorse or impulsivity. The testimonies of Matt Stone and David Rose were devastating. Both had reached plea agreements with the prosecution to reduce their sentences in exchange for cooperating. Matt stated, "Daniel Miller contacted us on September 29th. He offered us $10,000 to kidnap his father and get $300,000 from his accounts. When we asked what to do with the old man afterward, he replied that that was our problem, but there could be no witnesses." David confirmed. Sarah gave us blueprints of her father's house, schedules, habits, even recent photographs. She explained that he lived alone and that no one would visit him if he disappeared for several days. The defense tried to discredit the kidnappers, arguing they were habitual criminals. But the prosecutor had physical evidence that corroborated every claim: bank transfers, text messages, photographs, recordings. The trial lasted 6 days. During closing arguments, the prosecutor asked for 15 years for Daniel and 13 for Sarah, considering she was younger and might have been influenced by her brother. The defense attorneys asked for clemency based on the fact that the homicide was not completed, but the judge rejected that argument. The unequivocal intent to commit parricide is clearly demonstrated. On March 21st, the court issued its verdict. Daniel Miller was sentenced to 14 years in prison for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, aggravated extortion, and attempted first-degree murder. Sarah Miller received 12 years for the same crimes with mitigating factors. Matt and David were sentenced to 16 years each as material authors. When the sentence was read, I remained impassive. I felt no satisfaction or relief, only a deep emptiness where paternal love had once existed. My children wept inconsolably as they were led back to prison. I left the courthouse knowing that justice had prevailed, but also that my family had died forever. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I made the most radical decisions of my existence. Chicago had become a city of ghosts and poisoned memories. Every street reminded me of moments shared with Daniel and Sarah that I now knew had been theatrical performances. My textile company, Miller and Sons Incorporated, which I had built for 30 years, was sold for $1,300,000 to a Catalan consortium. Ironically, the name Sons in the company name had become a cruel sarcasm of fate. The family home on Belmont Avenue, where my children had grown up and where we had celebrated birthdays, Christmases, and graduations, was also put up for sale. A young couple with 2 small children bought it for $850,000. I was glad to know it would once again be a home filled with genuine love. I liquidated all my urban properties, 2 rental apartments in Lincoln Park and a commercial space in Wicker Park. In total, I gathered more than $2.5 million, a fortune my children had coveted so much they were willing to murder me for it. During those weeks of liquidation, I received dozens of letters from Stateville Prison. Both Daniel and Sarah wrote to me daily, begging for forgiveness, explaining their financial desperation, promising to repay every cent if I helped them reduce their sentences. I burned all the letters without reading them completely. Their words no longer had power over me. On the 15th of April 2025, I drove north for the last time, heading to rural Wisconsin, the state where I had been born, and where my maternal grandmother, Hope Miller, had raised me during my first 8 years of life. Grandma Hope had died when I was 23, but her teachings about honesty, hard work, and the importance of the land remained etched in my heart. Robert, she used to tell me while we cared for her chickens, the land never betrays you. You give it work and love, and it gives you sustenance and peace. I vividly remembered those childhood summers on her farm, waking up to the crowing of roosters, helping her collect eggs, learning to distinguish the medicinal plants that grew in the fields. Those had been the purest moments of my life. I found the perfect property in a town called Arcadia, about 40 miles from the state capital, a 150-hectare farm with a restored rural house, stables for livestock, a century-old olive grove, and ample pastures surrounded by oak trees. The previous owner, a retired rancher named Sebastian Torres, personally showed me every corner of the property. This land has fed 5 generations of my family, he explained with pride, but my children live in Milwaukee and want nothing to do with the countryside. I paid $400,000 in cash, no mortgage or complications. The contract was signed on April 28th, and I officially became the owner of my definitive refuge. The main house had 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen with a wood-burning fireplace, a library with solid wood shelves, and a porch that overlooked the olive grove. It was exactly the kind of home I had dreamed of having when I retired, before my children destroyed those plans with their betrayal. Sebastian taught me the secrets of ranching and agriculture. Goats are noble animals, he explained, as we fed the herd of 30 that came with the property. They give you milk, cheese, and if you treat them well, they stay with you for years. He also instructed me on the care of the olive grove. These trees are over 100 years old. They have survived droughts, frosts, plagues, and wars. They are symbols of resistance and patience. During May, I hired 3 local workers to help me while I learned. Julian Castillo took care of the livestock, Mercedes Ruiz tended the vegetable garden, and Antonio Morales maintained the farm machinery. The 3 became more than employees. They were neighbors genuinely concerned for my well-being. When I vaguely explained that I had family problems in Chicago, they never asked indiscreet questions. "We all come here fleeing from something," Antonio told me. I established simple but satisfying routines. I woke up at 6 to feed the goats. I had breakfast on the porch, reading local newspapers that contained no news of urban crimes or family betrayals. I dedicated the mornings to the olive grove, the afternoons to the garden, and the evenings to reading by the fireplace. For the first time in decades, I slept deeply without nightmares or worries about money or business. The transformation had begun. I had found a place to rebuild my life, far from those who had proven that my death was worth less than $300,000. 3 years have passed since that terrible night in the Joliet warehouse. Today is the 15th of October 2028, exactly the third anniversary of the day I discovered the true nature of my children. But it is no longer a date that causes me pain. It simply marks the moment my true life began. I am writing these lines from my porch, watching the golden sunset bathe my olive groves. The goats graze peacefully in the distance, and I can hear the murmur of the stream that crosses the property. This deep peace would have been impossible to imagine during my stormy years in Chicago. My daily routine has become a practical meditation. Every dawn, I wake up before the sun to collect fresh eggs from my chickens. I eat homemade bread that I bake myself, accompanied by warm goat's milk and fig jam that I prepare every autumn. These authentic flavors have replaced the elegant but empty meals of my past family dinners. The olive grove has produced 3 exceptional harvests under my care. The oil we extract has an intense, pure flavor that several restaurants in the state capital specially request. Julian tells me I have blessed hands for agriculture, but I know I have simply found my true purpose. Mercedes has taught me to grow vegetables I had never tried. Purple chard, ornamental squash, aromatic herbs that perfume the entire kitchen. Her rustic wisdom has connected me with ancestral knowledge that my business years had buried. Antonio and I have completely restored the old farm machinery, working with my hands, feeling the weight of the tools, solving simple mechanical problems. These activities provide me with a satisfaction that no million-dollar contract had ever given me. The townspeople have accepted me as one of their own. I participate in the town fairs, collaborate with the local church maintaining the cemetery, and have donated funds to repair the rural school. No one knows me as the betrayed entrepreneur from Chicago. I am simply Robert the rancher, respected for my honest work. During these 3 years, I have occasionally received news about Daniel and Sarah through my lawyer, Frank. Both have tried to appeal their sentences without success. They have lost all their assets to pay compensation and legal costs. Their former friends have completely abandoned them. Frank informed me that Daniel developed serious mental problems in prison and was transferred to a psychiatric penitentiary center. Sarah works in the prison laundry, earning $2 a day. The irony is perfect. The money they coveted so much is now unreachable for them. I have donated over $1 million to organizations that help victims of family violence. My assets have been deliberately reduced, but my spiritual wealth has grown exponentially. The Hope Miller Foundation, which I established in my grandmother's honor, provides free legal and psychological support to parents betrayed by their children. Every month I receive letters of thanks from people who have found hope after similar betrayals. Some afternoons, when I look out over my fields under the endless Midwest sky, I reflect on the lessons learned. Blood does not guarantee loyalty. Money corrupts even the most sacred bonds. But betrayal, although painful, can free us from toxic relationships that prevented us from growing. I no longer feel anger towards Daniel and Sarah. I don't feel love either. I simply feel nothing. They chose money over family. I chose peace over resentment. We both live with the consequences of our decisions. My current will donates my entire rural property to the town of Arcadia to be preserved as a protected natural space. My remaining savings will fund scholarships for young farmers who want to study sustainable agriculture. When my final moment comes, there will be no inheritances to generate greed or disputes to destroy families. All that will remain is the example of a man who learned that true wealth is not counted in dollars, but in sunsets watched without fear, in nights slept without nightmares, and in the certainty that no one can betray you when you no longer depend on anyone. Grandma Hope was right. The land never betrays. And in this land, I have finally found the family I always deserved to have. A family composed of century-old olive trees, loyal goats, and honest neighbors who value work above inheritance. This is my perfect revenge, having learned to be completely happy without them. If you liked this story, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.